Waseem, salam alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Mate, thank you so much for coming on Northern Vibe. I'm going to get fanboy to start straight off with. It's been my honor and my pleasure to be your friend for a number of years now.
Thanks, man.
Um,
Same here, man.
no, I'm serious, and I tell all my friends, look, if Waseem ever invites you around his house for some chicken, you make sure you go, because that guy, he could cook chicken for South Africa and Australia and be a gold medal hope. I still remember that, bro. It was honestly so good. But what brought us together for the people watching this interview? Well, we met before this event, but when I was in the police, you were the imam of the Cairns Mosque during the tragic the tragic events of the Christchurch massacre in 2019. And that was, I don't mind admitting, Waseem, that was, for me, that was an incredibly emotional time. We really wanted to show our support of you and the rest of the community. And of course, because there's been an Islamic community in Cairns and in Mareeba for, really since there were people up here, you get guys like Farouk, who's been, 3 or 4 generations,
Right.
he's more rocker than me. But and that's kind of saying something. But and I know you feel uncomfortable with me saying this, but I have to say it. The leadership that you showed during that tragic event really was something. So I'd like to, before we go into who you are and everything else, I'd like you to discuss, as much as you can, your memory of those events and the feelings that you had. I know there was a fair bit of fear, but then when everybody came to the Cairns Mosque community day afterwards, how that made you feel when you saw all these people marching in support.
Right. It was an absolute. Thanks again, Matt, for having me. Thanks. It's always a pleasure speaking to you and catching up with you. Really, my soulmate.
It's true.
My memory, 2019, but all I felt, like you said correctly, was, we felt fear initially as this, individual came into a mosque, opened fire in a mosque, killed a fair amount of people, and it put us into a, fear that it's not impossible, for this to happen to us.
Of course.
So, like you said correctly, like it was just unbelievable. Like you in this emotion of fear. You don't know what's going on. Can anyone just access uh guns and the like. And the next day, like you said, we had this amazing support of people coming to the mosque, and the kind words, and you just felt secure. You just felt safe. Not by the police, not by the federal police, but by the general people. And that was just so absolutely like heartwarming. That in tragedy, we come together and we support one another, despite, religious barriers and all these types of things. And just, it just made my heart, filled with hope, and love. It was just amazing. And I really, even till today, I appreciate the Queensland community, the Far North Queensland community, the Cairns community for all their support, and the Mareeba community. It was just, the mosque was absolutely packed.
Yeah.
Packed, packed with what? Packed support. And that's all that it was. It was just people there to be there for us in this, this tragic event, this massacre that happened. And they basically they told us, from their side, that this will never happen to you. And you just felt, absolutely safe. And still today, I just want to give my heartfelt thanks to all of those people.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you from the bottom of my heart, really.
Yeah. And it's really strange because everyone felt a sense of vicarious responsibility. And like I remember, and it's kind of like, I don't know why well, I mean, you understand why we feel that way, because, you know, we're all a member of some group, some collective or another. But, you know, I remember when that policeman in America, you know, killed George Floyd, which was absolutely terrible, you know, a horrible murder that he was held responsible for. And thank God, you know, went to jail for a long time. But when I remember watching that, I thought, oh, that's not going to be good for the cops over there. I really didn't think it'd affect us over here. But at the same time, I felt, even though I had nothing to do with it, I didn't know the guy, wasn't even in the same service, condemned the act. I felt a degree of responsibility. I kind of thought, because that's going to somehow reflect on me.
True, yeah, true.
And I know, like, I don't think, I know the Cairns community felt the same way when they saw that tragedy in New Zealand, which was done by an Australian, incidentally, which made it kind of like even worse. So all these people were hanging their heads in shame and going, well, you know, somehow that this reflects on me. It's just like, you know, so I know people were motivated by that. Oh my God, you know, please don't judge us by that. But secondly, just to show that, you know, I mean, and it's not just the awesome food that, because like, you know, as you well know, I've been down to the mosque, and mate, I've been a few times since you've left too. And I'm not a Muslim, but like, for me, it's the sense of community, it's the sense of solidarity, and partially the food, I've got to admit.
Right,
You know, God forgive me, but it's not just about the food, but it's so good, you know. And when I was just to give listeners some context and understanding, I was in the police, and I was at the time I was the officer in charge of the cross cultural unit, so I was spending a lot of time going to like meetings and stuff like that, and there's lots of food. I put on weight, like, mate, I put on 5 kilograms. It took me so long to work off. But anyway, so look, you're a really interesting man in and of yourself. Obviously, you're a man of God, and you're Iman. And you know, I know that you've memorized the Quran. I know I'm not going to ask you to recite some of it now, but that's an incredible memorable feat. You're also a family man with a wonderful wife and children who we're honored to know. But you're also a surfer. So kind of incongruous. Can you tell us about the surfing and how you got into that?
No. I don't think I can admit to look, before I came 2013, I came to Australia for the first time. And in 2011 or something, I had some friends or mates I met in you know, like surfers.
Yeah.
And I asked them to teach me how to surf, and you know, started going with them to the beach. You know, the wife, you know, shout, because surfing takes, you know, a lot of time of your day. And when I came here, and then I learned to surf, you know, like 1 year, 1.5 years. And I came to Australia, and you know, the mates are going, oh, best place in the world to surf. And I was excited, and I came to Cairns. Nothing, no waves. So for 7 years, I didn't go surf, nothing. But still haven't surfed in Australia. But just hope, inshallah, I'll get me a surfboard again. Yeah. Oh, but it's beautiful out there.
But mate, hey, look, fair enough. In North Queensland, you can't surf because there is no surf, and even if you could, there's like all these things that are going to try and eat you. But bro, you're in Western Australia now. You got no excuses. Pretty good surf down there.
Right. True.
Well, I know. I suppose it's just being so busy, being a man of the clock. Like it takes up so much of your time. But
and you have to do it with mates, man. You have to do it with mates. You know what I mean? You have to, people. You know, you can't go alone. You know, the shark only eat you. You know.
Take him. That's right, eh? But it's really funny because I find, and look, obviously this wasn't a planned question, but I find when I do stuff physical like that, that requires concentration, like for me, it's swimming. Like I just get in, it's a kind of, I almost get into not a meditative state because, you know, we, as people of the book, we don't, I mean, we do meditation, you can do it, but it's like, I find I almost get in a state of prayer because, like, you know, you really come into yourself, you're really conscious of, you know, being here and now, that consciousness. Did you ever find that with surfing? like
No,
getting
no,
right.
yeah. You
Was it kind of
reflect on
spiritual?
nature. Yeah, you reflect on nature. You look at nature, you look at the sea, you look at the vastness, you look at the skies, and you're alone, man. You're right. And you start reflecting on these things, like this is the creation of God. And it's just amazing, when you're by yourself, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I find those, the really deeply religious experiences. But tell
Yeah.
us, so, what drew you into, I know that you come from, like, I'm a cradle Catholic, so I know that you're from, you're raised as a Muslim, but what drew you into to become an imam? Because there's a lot of study involved in that. Like, it's hard work and there's a lot of time.
That's it. You mean becoming an imam like of the Cairns Mosque? Because I have to tell you something. Before I came to Cairns, I never did imam work. Imam is basically where you work at the mosque in a leadership role.
Yeah.
But you can be a scholar outside of that as well. Like many other, like teaching and things like that.
Yeah.
But this is a specific role, like in terms of, like working at the mosque.
Mhm.
So I just have to be honest with you. In that is, I never ever served as an imam in South Africa, man.
Mhm.
Uh, Only because of my personality, being like, I don't know what to say now, extremely shy.
Yeah, it's true.
Can't speak in front of people, and like struggle to do this. And then I was in South Africa, and my teacher, he came up to me and he said, "Look, you have to do something," because I was teaching something that's not like like in terms of growth. And then he said, "Look, you have to do something that would assist in this." And then this job came up, and then I basically came to Australia without ever speaking in front of anyone before. So it was like, oh no, I don't know what I was doing, but I thank God for it. But things just worked out. I mean, I got over myself, not completely, still struggling, but yeah, serving as that role was just like an internal thing that I wanted to get over. Your inhibitions and all these things keeping you back, and just putting myself out there. I remember the first time I gave a talk, like I spoke to a congregation. It was the first time in my entire life. No one knew, like no one. I mean, probably they did know, but I mean, they didn't. They thought I was an experience, like interesting.
Yeah.
And I can just tell you, Matt, my insides were like, like my stomach was in my head, and my head was in my stomach. That feeling. Oh, I was just sick. But like doing it week after week after week after week, it just got easier and easier and easier. Yeah. So yeah, that's that story about fulfilling the role of the leadership role in a mosque. Yeah, that was a struggle. Yeah, and I wanted to get over myself, like but still till today, I'm still anxious. But I think that's normal. I think like still when I speak today, I still get a bit of butterflies, but nothing like like nerves or something like that, like out of this world kind of things. And I also think it's like it's good that it's always going to be there,
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, you're interpreting the word of God, so it's like it's kind of important. It's an important thing. But that's I didn't know that actually. But the thing I find strange about that is, again, the leadership qualities that you showed during that. I mean, you really rose to the occasion, mate. Like, no, seriously. Like, I'm not throwing flowers at you here, bro. Like, people were looking at you, and you had to go speak to all these people, and mate, you nailed it. Like, you totally nailed it. Like, just and all the coppers were talking about it too, because I was talking to one of the other senior, like I was a sergeant then, as you know. I was talking to one of the senior sergeants after the mosque thing, and he goes, "Mate, that bloke's a leader." And I'm like, "Yeah, he is totally. He's got it." So it's kind of funny that like internally that you've got this conflict. But I've seen you speak at the mosque too. I'm in the Catholic Church, as you know. So when the priest gives a homily, sometimes they just wing it, but more often than not, it's prepared and it'll be around a certain theme. Like, do you do prep before you do that? Like, do you have an idea of what you're going to talk about?
Yeah. Like now it's much easier. Now I do prep, not as I used to before. Like like really, really, really prep. But yeah, I do prep and I know what I'm going to speak about before, and I'd never go into not, like not preparing. So I would go in prepared and then speak. Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I developed over time, and like, first I had to read from a paper, then I had to speak with looking at the paper, and then I'm not looking at the paper any longer, so it progressed, over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I've been to a couple of the Protestant or the evangelical ones as well, and you can tell these guys are just speaking,
Right, yeah.
off the top of their head. But all right, so we've got that, mate. Could you tell us? There's a South African accent going on there. Can you tell us? Can you tell us, about your family background? Where are you from, and how you were raised?
I'm from South Africa, Cape Town. So how do I describe this? I'm from like a suburb, a suburb in South Africa called Newfields. How do I describe it? Like like I don't know how to describe it, but a normal kind of background, normal type of upbringing, two parents, great parents. What can I say? Just can you ask me questions? I don't know what.
Yeah, brothers and sisters.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I've got two sisters. Two sisters younger than me. I'm the eldest. So mom takes my part all the time. So I get away with everything. Don't play this to them.
Yeah, my boy's like that as well. What did your dad do for a living?
Oh, my dad worked at a shoe factory. My dad worked at a shoe factory. My mom worked at a furniture company, and they basically they looked after us. I stayed with my parents until I got married. Yeah.
Great. All right. And so look, you've dived deep. You've dived deep into the cloth there. What is it about Islam that really, really appeals to you? Like, well, what is it about the religion and its philosophies and everything else that appeals to you and resonates with you personally?
Sure, it's a massive question. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I thought I'd throw you an easy one. Yeah.
it's not an easy one. I mean, it's easy because I say from as easy point of view as like to make yourself understand, to make others understand. It's harder because I grew up in Islam. Because obviously it's a different experience from someone that's looking, outside in. Do you understand? So I'm going to try to make them understand what I don't know, to make them understand what it is to be inside it. But it was, the Islam to myself was, to be honest with you about my upbringing, I didn't know much about Islam. And I mean, I did know like the basics, like anyone else would know, pray and these things. And when I came to study Islam, oh my gosh, I got a shock. Like, what I mean? Like, not there's not a big difference between what the people were doing and myself were doing, but just the information, man. Because you sometimes think that the religion is just this, man. Like praying 5 times a day, fasting in the month of Ramadan. I thought that this was it. But when I studied, I found like, oh my gosh, like so much mind-blowing type of things, that you have to ask me specifics, like if you want to know like about these things. But obviously what resonates for me now about Islam is I feel deeply connected to it, is that it kind of centers around 3 practical beliefs, man. 3 practical things, right? Like the outer worship that we have in terms of, we believe in one God and we believe in all the prophets and those things. And the 5 daily prayers, that's all the outer things that we do, like physically you can see me praying, so to say. Then we have the belief structure. The belief structure is what I believe in. I believe in God, I believe in the angels, I believe in all the prophets. And then the third aspect to the religion, which they have to all 3 be in line, and it's a spiritual aspect to these 2 things, man. Which means you cannot pray, just by lifting up your hands, man, and asking God. Man, there has to be a spiritual thing, which means your heart has to connect, so to say, to God. And those types of things, for me, like drew me and to if I can say, drew me. I was Muslim. I'm Muslim already, but those types of things, I feel like a connection with the religion is.
Mm.
Because it's not just a practice, there's a spiritual aspect to it as well.
Mm.
There's a consideration for others as well. There's a consideration, and it's always about that. And that really struck me, like, this religion actually isn't about me, man. I'm not the main person. I'm not the main character here. Do you understand?
Mm.
Everyone else is the main character, man. It's
Yeah.
how I can change their lives, how I can, and I'm not speaking from myself like as an imam or a priest or something, like this is for everyone in the religion.
Yeah.
For everyone, that's Muslim. But yeah, to think about others, basically, yeah.
I think that's one thing we people of the book have that, and I've got a lot of atheist materialist friends. In fact, as you well know, we're actually getting to the stage now where I wouldn't go as far to say that Australia is a fully atheist country, because the Christian roots, the Judeo-Christian roots of our country run really, really, really deep. So people are influenced by, Judeo-Christian thought, even without knowing it, even without being conscious of it. A lot of things that they think are actually rational were revealed. But the thing that we have, and I'm using the we in the sense of the religious, is that we understand that there is this higher principle which we must subordinate ourselves to. That kind of like, the good thing about a hierarchy is, it puts everything in perspective. It's like, okay, well, there's a hierarchy. Above you is God and His Word, but there is a relationship between you and there. This understanding comes down, and you worship up. The more I talk with atheists and materialists who have absolutely nothing in their life, Waseem, I genuinely feel pity for them. Like, seriously, and I don't mean that in a condescending way.
No,
How do you orientate your life? Like, what do you do? Rationality will only take you so far. And I wouldn't call myself, I'm by no means an expert, but I'm pretty well. I've read Richard Dawkins's, so not all, but I'm familiar with his work. I listen to Sam Harris's podcast. I listen to those guys, and they're kind of like, they lack that relationship. I pity them. Like, I don't know how they get through their. I don't know how they get through their days. You know what I mean? I genuinely don't. Like, I just.
It's our belief structure with that is like, intrinsically, all of us were created with this natural, what we call, like in the Arabic language, like a fitra, man. It's a natural disposition, man. Like, all of us have inclination to worship something. This is true for even the atheists. You understand? It's just the thing that they worship. I don't want to say it here because it's but there is something. Like, we worship God, and even myself, I could end up worshiping myself. I mean, saying, even as a Muslim, I wouldn't do it in that sense. But if I place a lot of focus on myself, like that I'm so this and I'm so that, and I'm, like my mind is it, so to say. So I could end up there as well. I just said it now, sorry, but that's basically what I meant. So we incline towards those things. We incline towards worship. Our innate nature is to worship something. Do you understand? So we seek it out, man. So whether it is, like I said it before, that's my belief with regards to.
Absolutely, that's the thing. Look, when you see the movement in history from paganism, which is worshipping many gods, to worshipping one God, however you conceive of that, and whichever, obviously, and that's going to change with your conception of God, which is going to be influenced by which prophets you recognize and which ones you don't. But again, we hold more in common in so much as that we can see that there are these minor gods that really are vying for your attention. So, like, there is kind of like a conceptual framework, I think, would be something like this for the purposes of conversation. So you have like a little god of pride in your head that wants you to worship it, that actually wants you to subordinate all other beliefs to that. And then you can have material things too. You can have then you can have desires which will act as gods in so much as that you will worship them and subordinate your will to those things. So it might be sex, it might be a desire for alcohol, it might be, it might be a desire for money, the desire for status. All these things I think are best conceptualized as gods. When Freud talks about them in the materialist sense, he talks about them as personalities. You got the id and the superego, and you got all these kind of things.
Yes.
But that's just different language for the same. That's using secular language for old concepts that peoples of the book understood a long time ago. And one of the things I'd really like your take on this. One of the things I really like about the recent debates on transsexuals and all that kind of stuff, and I know a couple of trans people, and I've spoken to them on my podcast. So for anyone that out there that wants to get a unique perspective, it's worth listening to them. But one thing that constantly comes up is, so you've got this dissonance between the body and the spirit, because these people are saying, well, I'm a wrong spirit in this body, and that's what some people say, not all, but that's one of the things. Okay, I mean, people like you and me might kind of like sit there, but at least now secular people are starting to use that language, because like for people like us, it's like, yeah, you're a spirit in a body, your spirit animates the body. Whereas for your materialist secular atheists, it's like, no, you're kind of like a meat puppet. That's what you are. You know what I mean? And you're just this group of stuff like that. Now, finally, in the secular world, there is a discussion about the dissonance between spirit and body. So the different desires that you might have and what's authentically you. I think, Waseem, and again, I really want your take on all the different subjects I've raised here, that this is going to cause people to move back to religion in a big way. I can see a regrowth of religion in the West as a result of this trans stuff.
I mean, I would hope for that. I mean, that's an awesome thing that people can come back to religion. So how do you base it on? You base it on that. How do you base it on? I want to understand.
Because they're talking about spirits and souls. Right? Whereas before, again, the materialist atheist goes, there's no such thing. You're a meat puppet. But then again, you have these people that are saying, no, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God. There is a different spirit in my body. Finally, in their world, using different language, but it's going to lead to the same thing. It's going to lead back to a discussion about the metaphysical world. It has to.
Oh, you reckon? Okay.
Yeah, it has to. I mean, do you see it leading there, or do you think this is going to go?
No, I didn't. I mean, I didn't think about it like that till now. You mentioned it to me, But I mean, it's always good, if people can come back to religion. It's always good.
So, like, how do you see, like, as someone who's come from South Africa, raised as a Muslim, and like, why do you think religion is dying in the West? What's happening, do you think? And I mean religion generally, obviously, because we were kind of Judeo-Christian, like it's the death of Christianity.
Right.
What's happening there? Like, what do you think's going on?
Sure. I mean, I can't speak for other religions, you see. But I mean, is your question like, there's a lot of factors, man. Like, I mean, if you look at factors where people lose faith in the leadership of whatever religion, man. Do you understand? Like, people of different denominations, of different faiths, of different, the leadership, and then people lose hope in the religion. I mean, it's not an excuse. The religion won't excuse them. It still will hold all of us accountable. But it affects people. People in different countries. Like even in Muslim countries, you would find proper Islam not being practiced in those countries, and women being treated maybe badly. And then women come here, because I've had this few cases even in Cairns. They come here, they come to Australia, and you find they don't practice their religion any longer. And they would tell you this because of oppression in their countries. But the truth and the sad thing is it's got nothing to do with the religion, man.
Of course.
But it gets internalized, like, like to think, because it's coming from the leadership point of view, it only has to be religion. And so people, they sidestep, they leave it, so to say, for that. But why people is leaving religion in the West in general? Sure. I don't know. We live in a different age as well. I don't know. Like, the age we live in, it's not an age that, but everything is just so, how it is, internet and, whatever it is that's around us. And now, life is just fast, man.
Mm.
I don't know if and people have to take a step back. I don't know if life is becoming too fast or life is becoming too hectic. But I don't think I can answer why people are leaving religion. If you can give me some insights, and maybe
Yeah.
because in my own religion, people are not leaving religion, like becoming like people are, but not because of the religion, man. It's because the way they're being treated inside of the religion, man. Like even me, not me myself, but like me as a parent, man. The way I treat my son or my daughter, man.
Mm.
And they kind of see that, let's say for instance, it is me, and like they know, their father as maybe a religious person that goes to the mosque, whatever it might be. And I even, like shout at them and swear at them, and
Yeah.
this type of behavior, which is totally wrong. So they internalize that to think this is the religion that is speaking like this. And they would start off by not practicing the religion. It's not that they gave up in the religion, it's just they got no hope in it because of the example set forth by the leadership. I don't know, that's how
Yeah,
somehow
no, that makes sense. And obviously, with the scandals that we've had in the Catholic and other churches, incidentally, like I know it is actually happening in Buddhism too, because I've still got some friends in Mongolia, and there are all these scandals with all this sex abuse scandals that was happening in Buddhism over it. It's like yeah, because again, you get these spirits that attack these religions and try to bring these things out. But I'm basically conversant, but could you explain, the distinction between, Sunni and Shia Islam, for if you were explaining that to the good listeners of Northern Vibe, because there's a lot of confusion out there.
Sure. The difference between Sunniism and Shiism is just practically who was going to take over the leadership after the Prophet, peace be upon him. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who was to take leadership after him. Now, according to our Prophet, peace be upon him, and according to us as Sunni, because I'm Sunni, the person that is to take leadership after the way we perceive things to be is the most qualified individual, right? The most qualified individual. Whereas the Shia belief is that the person, now they would also maybe have the person then as the most qualified according to them, but they base it on family.
Yeah.
Right? So that is just the basic difference between us and Shiism, is they say that every leader that must come after the Prophet is ordained by God, which we don't believe in, right? And they must be family of the Prophet, direct family of the Prophet, peace be upon him. So we don't believe this. We believe that, yes, there is leadership that is to take its role after the Prophet's death, right? But that is in the hands of the most qualified people. So we basically would have a shura. A shura is like a mutual kind of agreement. So we'd have a council, so to say, and a council would elect who the leader is, so to say, right? Because based on the person's qualifications. To put it like that, qualifications. But there's things that make up qualifications, but it's not based on family. It's not based on who the Prophet's family is and things like that. So that is the general difference between us and Shiism. If you have more questions about Shiism, you're welcome to ask.
Yeah, doctrinally, what are the differences? This is something I'm kind of interested in. I've done a little bit of reading in. Like, for example, the differences between the Catholic and the Protestant churches, I would say, are two things. first it's conceptual, and then there are obviously theological things that come from the conceptual. So we Catholics, we hold that you can and should have a direct relationship with God, of course, but your understanding of God is going to be mediated by the church.
Okay.
And that's because the church selected the writings, which because there were lots of, especially in the early church, people were writing versions of the Bible right up to like 400 years afterwards. You got all these, what we call apocryphal. So that's books that were widely circulated and were used by various, versions of the church, which were leading to heresy. So, you're getting the same, and I know the same sort of thing, you were discussing before, same sort of things happens in Islam. So if you have someone who's claiming authority in the church and claiming to speak to a certain degree for the church and saying, well, you can do this and you should conceive things that way, and people go, well, that's kind of not cool. And then they're saying, it's not me, I'm quoting this book. Well, obviously the issue is like, okay, so let's get, which books are we going to recognize? So that was, that was the first job really of the Catholic Church. And then it comes down to interpretive. It's like, all right, so you've got these broad principles like love one another as I have loved you, love God, and love God and love one another. It's like, okay, well, what does that mean? What's that going to look like? What is love? Because you look at the recent debate with the gay marriage thing. It's like love is love, and when you've got a diluted version of what love is, if it's just sexual, well, it's perfectly reasonable to come to that conclusion. But that's not an irrational, conclusion to come through.
No.
So we kind of like hold that you need an interpretive framework, and that interpretive framework should come. And in this way, we're kind of like the Shia. It's like for us, apostolic succession is important. So you'll have the apostles spread out all over the world. They've founded these various churches. If you can link your training and teaching and your thought to one of those apostles, and ultimately the main apostle being St. Peter, well, then there's a degree of legitimacy and you can claim to be authentically Christian. If you're outside of that apostolic understanding, there is a big risk. I wouldn't go as far to say that you're not Christian, but there is a really, really big risk of apostasy, heresy, and misunderstanding.
Okay.
So with the Protestants, because they believe the only thing that should really mediate between man and God is the Word of God, so the Bible. Well, I mean, how are you going to interpret that? And considering that, over here that we've got a translation of a translation. That's one thing that Islam has got that's great. It's like, dude, you got to learn Arabic. It's part of the thing. You got to speak Arabic. So there's less chance. There's less chance of that misunderstanding. So that, and I'm sure you could see straight away as a learned man of God that there's. So you're going to get. That's why you get all these Protestant sects that just keep on splitting and splitting and splitting and splitting and splitting and splitting and splitting. You can understand how and why that would happen if they're saying, well, the only thing really, and this is how you can end up self-crowning, is my reason, my interpretation of that word. Well, there's a great danger of you crowning yourself and making yourself as opposed to listening to the people who came before you and who've been interpreting this long before. Is there any kind of like doctrinal differences between Shia and Sunni in that way as a result of interpretive framework and authority?
Okay, so it's a big
I'm hitting you with the easy ones, aren't I?
It's okay. In Sunnism, right? This is gonna be bad now to the Shias, but anyway, in Sunnism, we have the Prophet, right? Like the fountainhead, like of the interpretation of the Word of God. Right? So the Quran is the Word of God. God is at the top. The Prophet is the messenger, deliverance of the message, and the interpreter of the message. Which means when the Prophet says something, he doesn't say it, number one, from his own desire. That's also inspired from God. In the interpretations, which they call the hadith, they call the sunnah, right? So let's move on from that. So now we have the Quran as the first legislative, the first legal document, right? And then we have the second legal document, which is the Sunnah, the Prophet's words, right? Then in the next generation after that, after the Prophet's demise, is those people that have been with the Prophet, right? Those people that were in the company of the Prophet, that, you know, like recorded these things, recorded his sayings, documented his sayings, documented his interpretations, documented his legal principles, which was derived to later generations, man. So what you have from one generation to the next generation to the next generation. Now, the law wasn't written in a way like the Ten Commandments, man. Like don't do, do. You know, it wasn't written like this, man. It was written almost like in a form. If you go through the Quran, it is written in a form like you have vague, sometimes clear, sometimes vague, sometimes. But the reason why it is like this, it is because the Prophet informed us that the law would basically stand up to the end of days, which means the law is always applicable. The law doesn't become old, it doesn't stagnate, man. Now, the only reason why it doesn't stagnate, because it is 1400 years old, right? But its principle, so to say, it was laid down, man, 1400, which means the law is always, how do I say this? The law is always developed and can develop, which means if any issue comes up, man, any issue, any question comes up, let's say, for instance, they're going to grow meat, you know, like the stem cells and whatever, they're going to grow meat, right? Islam has to come whether we can eat that or not. Islam has to come with an answer, man. Even though it's not mentioned in the Quran, even though it's not mentioned 1400 years ago, man. So I'm just saying the development of law. Now, what led to the development of law was exactly what I'm trying to come to now, man, is the time of the Prophet, the era of the Prophet, the era of his companions, right? And then they taught students, and it's a crazy amount of information that's obviously been developed, right? Now, just take that same idea that I said with normal people now, from the Prophet, from his companions, right? From his companions to later generation, and now connect that to family and Shiism. Do you understand? And we believe a lot of what Shias did, right? What they did a lot was fabricate sayings by the Prophet to prove their point, man. To prove the way their methodology, that the Prophet said it must be with family, that the Prophet said that specifically made it clear that, you know, who was to be the next leader. So I don't know if that was clear for you, but
it is. It is. It's very clear, actually, because again, it's kind of like, well, that's a kind of appeal to a apostolic succession, except that it's making it family. You guys are actually, it's really funny because there's kind of like a mix of both there. Again, the thing with apostolic succession is, so we had these original, you had the original 12 apostles, they spread out all over the world. They taught people, it didn't matter who they were related to. And considering that, most of them weren't married, it kind of like, they weren't having kids. So it was their intellectual sons and fathers. So we kind of like hold that as well. But we still have quite a rigid church. And I actually regularly attend Rabbi Ari Rubin's. Oh, incidentally, he told me to say g'day. So I said, I'm talking to Waseem. And he goes, tell him I said g'day. Big shalom to you from Waseem from Ari. I've passed it on.
Good day, Ari.
Mate, he's a good bloke. He rates you, mate. Anyway, so I regularly attend his lessons online, and the relationship between Jewish legalism and the way, well, Jewish theology and Christian theology, there's much more in common than there isn't, of course, like because that's where we come from. But I think, and this might even get me in trouble with my church, but I think they kind of like do things really well, because so you've got a lot of these principles, and you look at a lot of the Old Testament stuff. It's like, well, what did this mean? So again, to use the example of what you can and can't eat, well, specifically, how can we apply that to that circumstance that you used before? The way they do it is actually astoundingly like English common law. And I think that this is, the English common law would have kind of like taken this idea from. So you have all these people, these respected rabbis, not prophets, but respected rabbis going, okay, what does this mean? How are we going to apply this principle in this circumstance? And they'll have a discussion about it and they'll talk about it. But they understand that you'll get people that come up with different conclusions. So they have, and this is a very big oversimplification, but it's still good enough to have a conversation. They have three really, really well-respected rabbis, and one of them is Maimonides, who lived in the caliphates. And so it's like, okay, they can kind of like, and some of these guys will say completely different things. It's like, in one circumstance, it's like, yes, you can. The other one's like, no, you can't. And then you might get someone who, oh, maybe, depends. We still got to, it's still kind of good. So you can appeal to either one of these guys and still be within Judaism. You know what I mean? And don't get me wrong, we both know quite a few Jewish people. They're a stiff-necked, argumentative lot, and I say that with complete respect and just as an observation of reality. And what Christianity kind of did, and again, this is a very big oversimplification, is initially they were like, okay, well, let's get rid of the legalism. It's just about the application of this really simple principle of like, love and fear God and love your neighbor as yourself. So simple. All the rules, and Christ actually said this, all of the law comes down to that simple principle. So just, if you're not sure, apply that principle and you're going to be okay. But again, then we hit the problem of misunderstanding and heresy. It's like, well, maybe does smacking your son, is that love? Is that the right thing to do? Well, I mean, it depends. I mean, if you're motivated just by a concern with discipline and trying to right your son, and there's no frustration and anger there, well, the answer is probably yes. But if you're doing it just because you're frustrated, well, then the answer is no. It's about your frustration. So, you got all these problems. And what the Catholics did is, and God forgive me for saying this, but it's kind of true, is that then they got really, because they were so concerned about heresy, and you can see why it happened. They went, nah, we're gonna re-legalize it. And we're not even going to be like the Jewish people and have like three, people you can kind of appeal to. It's like, we're going to sit down, we're going to have a conclave of cardinals, and we're going to make the law, and it's canonical law, and that's it. So it's kind of like there's always this tension in the Catholic Church about that, and you can understand why. And the Protestants have got a point. It's like, yeah, we think they're wrong, and sometimes I think, yeah. So you can kind of see you're always going to get this. Like people, like when I'm talking to people that they go, oh, why do you guys fight? And I got an atheist friend that always throws this in my face because I talk about you and I do my incompetent best to read about Islam and become as familiar as I can with the hadiths in so much as I can. And I haven't got much further in the Quran. Sorry, I'm still only up to about the 6th surah. Sorry.
Oh, it's a lot.
Oh, yeah, I know, but and look, I know one of the evidences of the truth of the Prophet, peace be upon him, being actually getting the message directly from God is the beauty of the poetry. And obviously, I'm only reading English translations, but you really can see the beauty of the poetry coming through, even in the English translations. You can see the beauty of it. Some of that stuff is just so beautiful, some of the writing, and that's the English translation. So God alone knows what it's going to be like in in the original. Like I almost wish I could go and learn Arabic just to understand it. But this atheist friend of mine is always throwing in my face, well, you can't always be, you can't all be right because you're all mutually exclusive. But perhaps you can all be wrong. You know what I mean? That one that they kind of say, and they got a point, and you can see why too. You can see how they can come to that. It's not as if, because apply that principle of love. It's so challenging.
No, true.
So like, how many okay, so let's, I'll ask a direct, I suppose, theological question. So in Christianity, and this reflects Judaism, so I really don't think I'm going out along there, but we have a number of different translations of the meaning of the word love. So in English, unfortunately, and it's such a limited language in that, it's like love. And again, we saw it in the gay marriage debate, love is love. But traditionally, like there's a godlike love. And the the Greek word for that is agape. And then you've got all these different other sorts of love. So you've got, and I know I'm mispronouncing this, but like the childlike love, which is the love of a friend, which is ludove. And then you've got all this, I won't even try the Greek because my Greek is terrible. But then you've got like, so the love of a friend is different than a love between a man and a woman. And like a kind of like flirty, non-sexual love is different from the love between a husband and a wife. And, then you'll have sexual love. You'll have all these different conceptualizations of love. Is that spoken about specifically in the Quran or the Hadiths or anything like that? Like, these kind of interpretive frameworks?
I'm just listening to you because I'm thinking the reason why you guys went into so much, like defining love so much, because that's your base, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the love is mentioned. No, everywhere love. I just asked specific, love of God, love of the prophet, love of your neighbor, love of your wife. Definitely, yes. Love is something that has to be inside. But I think what it means to us maybe is not different, but maybe somehow defined in a certain way. So love of how do you define love of? The easiest one is love of a wife. I mean, what does that mean, really? I mean, for me, yes, you said correctly that this is a relationship between husband and wife, but it's built on something, man, like that what you call love. But what does it look like?
Yeah.
From my point of view is from my point of view as a husband, and what does it look like? And for me, it looks like something like where you are caring for someone. You understand, despite this, despite that. And I think the love we have for God kind of transcends with everything else, man. Like if you got proper love with God, like how would you treat his creation? Did you understand? Like if I'm, because that's what my wife is. My wife is one of his creation. You understand? One of his beloved. You understand? So if my relationship is there with God, everyone else, so to say, that love will emanate from them, because that's the base. You understand? There's this closeness that I should have towards God, this connection that I should have for him, like in worshiping him and praising him. Do you understand? So if that's right, everything else I believe flows from there.
It'll fall into place. And that's the important thing about getting this hierarchy of understanding, about putting God at the top of everything.
Right. Yes.
Because if you get that relationship and understanding right, literally, and I mean this, like everything else, everything will fall into place.
Right.
And every dilemma that you face, you'll have at least, even if you don't have a specific law, you'll have like a principle you can apply to sort it out. It's like, that's one of the things I do get angry with my church for, is like, dude, you don't need to make a law for everything. You really don't. But I mean, that's a very Protestant thing to say. You know what I mean? Because then we fall back into the danger before. It's like, well, Matt, maybe you're worshiping yourself. Maybe that you're going to misunderstand that, because I mean, for you to presume that you're going to be able to interpret that correctly is kind of like so again, you're falling straight into that. You're straight into that danger again, straight away.
I just want to comment on something you said earlier about me, but I don't mean to, because
no, please. It's a conversation. I'm not going to get offended.
Yeah, because the ideas come now, like because you asked the question earlier, what appealed to me about Islam, and I think it was exactly that what we're speaking kind of about now, man. And that is that I found out that Islam. Please, you can ask me questions about this. Islam basically covers each and every aspect of your entire life, man. It basically governs it, man. You understand? Everything is governed for you. Everything is set out as this is gonna be. This is the ideal person that you can possibly be if you do this. Lots of things, man. It's just really It's a host of things. I cannot say everything here, obviously. But if you ask, I can say maybe if I know. But that appealed to me, man. Even the way I do business, even there's a law of business, how I transact with someone. And there's a whole chapter just on the laws of, I mean, just that. Then there's the laws of how to be with a neighbor.
Yeah.
You know, like just like on that level, on a level of someone that's trading, to a level on a person that, you know, like just with another person. What am I allowed? We even have laws like what am I allowed to tell someone to his face? You know what I mean? What am I allowed to say to another person? You know, like let's say for instance, I have a desire, I'm angry at him. Even anger is governed. I'm not allowed to shout at someone. I mean, so many people, they you know, even Muslims, they don't know this. They would just shout at another individual, just raise their voice. I'm not allowed to do that.
Mm.
The text doesn't allow me to do it. The Prophet prohibited men and women from raising their voice to screaming at people, to shouting at people.
Mm.
So I think that really, really appealed to me, man, in terms of like I need that, man.
Yeah.
I can't interpret that because you know, like for one person it's gonna be different to another person.
Yeah.
If we try to figure things like this out, like you know, like how to live with one another, but if you
Yes.
set way, you know, yeah, yeah,
No, it's so complicated. And that's one of the things I found in the police, because like, again, especially as a young constable, you presume to know that your judgment is going to be sufficient to, and you look back on it, it's like how foolish and prideful that was. You know, what you how sinful, really, that that in your pride you would presume to think that you had the judgment with that. But one of the
but
other
just all
things,
of us matter, you know, I just the lower my head, you know, like
I
this
know,
was.
right? But one of the things that I found out about myself was that there is a lot of darkness in me. And well, I mean, for example, I like violence. Like it took me a little while to kind of like recognize that. But like, you know, it's fun getting in fights, especially if you win. Like it's no good if you get towed. But if you're winning, dude, like it's just the best fun. And then when you find out that this darkness that lies inside you, you really do need, like that's one of the things that brought me back from a hazy agnosticism to Christianity, to a specifically religious thing. It's like, oh, this recognition that, oh, there's a lot of darkness in me. Actually, that it's not like good guy in blue shirt, bad guy over there. It's like, no, there is a line in my heart, and I could go either way here. Like this could, and unless I recognize something above me, and I realize, you know, that the laws both of man and God willing, you know, they do intertwine as much as we can make them. Unless you're acting within that, you're acting within pride. You've crowned yourself, which is what you know, the evil one, Azrael, Satan, did. You know, basically he crowns himself. He thinks that he's worthy, he's above God, that he, you know, that he could do that. And I just, you know, to recognize that in yourself is kind of like, whoa. It's kind of,
But that's so important what you're raising. I mean, for myself, the same thing. We have to, and that's the only way we can move forward, man, is to recognize that darkness, man. The worst scenario is when the darkness is there and you don't want to see it. And that's the worst state someone can be in. Because for the rest of my life, I'm just gonna, oh, I'm right. And you know, the one time I was wrong, I was actually right. You know, that type of mentality.
where you tell yourself you thought you made a mistake once, but it ended up you were wrong.
We're actually right.
Well, one of the things that intrigues me about Islam and like theologically, it's one of the things that I got to say, and you know, we're just having a conversation. You know, I mean, no disrespect when I say this.
No.
I don't really understand this, the idea of conceiving of God as determining everything personally. I don't really understand the relationship between free will, like Islam's relationship between free will.
Okay, Alex. Yeah, I'll explain. It's a difficult thing, but basically what that means is, look, the thing is, our understanding of God is, which I believe is correct, man. God cannot be in the darkness about anything, man. His knowledge is complete, right? His
Yep.
knowledge is complete, which means he's not a God like this is not learning, man. News is not, events is not happening, like unfolding, like, oh, I never knew that was going to happen. That's impossible on God.
Yeah.
You agree? So with that belief, right, he has to know what my movements are. He has to know what my next idea will be. He has to know what, I'm going to do. For me, in my world, it's perceived as a choice. Did you get that? I know for me, it's
I think, I mean, my issue is he controlling it in so much as a puppet master? Like, is God actually deciding what you are going to do in your world, your life predetermined? Which is incidentally what some people who claim to be Christian, like the Baptists, fundamentally believe that, and like to Catholic and to the Lutherans and to the other, like, no, you can't do that. And our take on that is yes, but it's conceiving of God. I mean, our only thing with that is like you're putting God in a timeline. So if you conceive of God, like for him, and kind of relativity, actually, Einstein's theory of relativity kind of agrees with this, that if you take God outside of time, to him, everything already has happened.
exactly.
And is happening now. But it's not just, again, stop thinking of things in a timeline. It's not like a timeline. It's like, no. The past, present, and future are now. He is living in the constant, eternal now. So he knows what you're going to do.
Right, yes.
But that doesn't invalidate human free will, because like you can decide. It's not whether or not, like you really are going to hit crossroads.
No,
You really are going to. You really are going to make.
I want to strike someone, I can strike someone.
Yeah.
You understand? But I have to know that knowledge was with God.
Yeah.
He didn't find out about it, man. He didn't like,
No. No. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, totally. I mean, we agree on the same thing, but that's different from saying he controls it. Like, here's like, and I use it all the time now too. Like, even my secular friends, they've kind of picked up on it. Like, and I love inshallah. I just love the word because it's so good. It's like, the way it's used. It's like, hey, we're seeing, maybe you and I should go for a coffee. Yeah, inshallah, God willing, maybe. And that means in the sense of like, maybe, we could catch up. But it's like, and it can be used in like the sense of, well, maybe, or it's like, yes, I would like this to happen, or yeah, absolutely, or all these different contexts that if God wills it, is used in. And like I use it at work now, and even some of my secular friends have picked up on it. It's like, so I'll say, hey guys, should we do this? And I got one of the guys at work now goes, inshallah. And I'm like, yeah. But that's different from like understanding that the God's perception of time is different from God controlling things. You know what I mean? In so much as direct control. Now, he controls things in the Christian mind. He controls things in so much as like there is a group of paradigms. There is only so much you can do. So, you're a human being within a body. So you're not infinite. You have to a certain degree infinite capacity within the finite realms. Like, this conversation could have literally gone anywhere. We could have talked about the weather. We could have talked about, whatever it is. No. Not surprisingly, considering our mindsets, we ended up talking about God because that's something that we're both interested in. But like it could have gone anywhere. So there's a relationship with the finite and the infinite. And that's the human beings in the Christian mind. That's the human beings' relationship with God. Like, he has made himself, especially in the person of Christ, the infinite God became the finite. You know what I mean? So it's like this relationship. What are you going to do with this for intensive purposes? And like, I understand that human beings can't fly. So I'm not infinite in the sense of like, I can't do a Superman thing. Beams can't come out from my eyes and stuff like that. So yes, I am finite, but in so much as like a chess game can be infinite because there's so many different things that you can do. That's what it's like for me. That's how things are. And God has already seen it because like in some sense it's already happened because of his relationship with time. We just experience it differently. but he doesn't get in my head and like raise your right hand, do this. He doesn't do those things.
No, of course, yeah. I mean, we still, like, the way we perceive things is we are making the choices, man. Right? But ultimately, he's creating these things for us. Right? He's creating my hand moving like this.
Yeah.
You understand? Because that's what creation means. Doesn't mean create and leave. Right? All these things, actions I'm doing with my hand are being created right now. But the thing is that's why that relationship with him is so important. Like, if my life is going like bad, man, I know what's bad. Because he has set out to show me what's bad, man. My prophet explained to me what's bad. So I appeal to him to guide me. But it's not like you said, like a puppet guide me, man. I still feel in myself I make these choices. But it's ultimately him in his favor.
Yeah.
So where I sit here today, man, for myself, if I am good, it's only through his favor. It's got nothing to do with my ability, man. I must realize that.
Yeah.
You understand?
Exactly. It's the same Christian conceptualization. There's no difference. It's like, for us, it's allowing, I think possession is a good way of doing it too. And now that you see all these, demons like stalking the earth and possessing people, the Brothers Karamazov, that there's this great book, The Brothers Karamazov, and there's another one called Demons, written by Dostoevsky. He's a Russian and like a deeply.
No, I have the Brothers one. I haven't read it yet. The really thick one, eh?
Oh yeah, mate. It is good. It's a slog, not in the sense of like, because it does engage you, but it's one of those. I find it's one of those books you can't. It's not light reading. Like, it's not something you can read just as you kind of go into bed. Like when I read Dostoevsky, I don't drink beer. I don't do it just before I go to sleep. Like, I'm concentrating. You know what I mean? And so it's good in the sense of like it's food for your brain. But it's tough because, like, man, you're concentrating like 15, 20. I can only do 15, 20-minute hits. It's so hard. It's just, it's so deep. And of course, you'll read something and go, wow, what's he talking about there? And you'll spend 7 minutes of your reading time thinking about one sentence. And it's like, you've read 2 pages and you. But he talks about, to get to the point, one of his other books is Demons. And he talks about these ideas that possess people. And people let these ideas, which are patterns of behavior and intelligence separate from human beings in, but they let them in. Like, that's the choice that they made to a certain degree. And here's the relationship with addiction. Like, if you let too much alcohol in your life, you can become addicted to it. You lose control over you lose control over it. Like, you will, even against your own will. An alcoholic will go, I know I need to stop drinking, but I will sacrifice everything. I will put alcohol at the center of my life. I will fundamentally worship that thing. And in that sense, it acts like a demon. It acts like an intelligence because it controls you, but you let that in. Whereas if you choose to let God in, you'll get a very different pattern of behavior that.
Right. So we got a few more. Like, we have demons that we believe in, like yourself, like that invite towards evil, right? But the demon, like, same, like, just like invites, man. It just like, whispers, so to say, to ideas and things like that. I obviously cannot do, like, you cannot blame a demon for doing what I do. But the true captain of the ship, man, is not, so to say, the demon, man. It's actually what we call nafs amaratun bisu. This inside of us, man, your ego. This thing inside of you that's inviting towards evil, man. We're always gonna have that voice in our head, man, that's telling us, do this. I'm talking about the wrong things now, man. Do this, do that. That inviting thing, that's always gonna bug us, man. So the religion comes to such a part to teach us how to bring that under control, man. Not to get rid of it. You can't get rid of it. You're not gonna wake up one day and like be an angel and like, I have no, like, problems in the world. I'm just good. It's never. It's always gonna bug you, man. But the skill is how to bring this under control, and for the rest of your life, that's why this religion is called, to some, mujahada, to strive, and it's striving upon the self. You understand? To perfect the self, man. Not that we can reach perfection, but to strive upon the self. Yeah, so the true thing is to bring that self under control, yeah. And then the demon, so to say, will he will keep his distance. We hope, but he keeps his distance when the believer is constantly involved with godly work, so to say.
Mm.
Yeah.
But you think of what's implied in that. That means that you're constantly fighting a holy war within yourself to ensure that you're on the side of God, rather on the side of your desire. So constantly you're at war with yourself. That's
Something like that, yeah. You're at war with yourself, yeah.
yeah, constantly. Wow.
Yeah. But it's always like just thinking, or that is the thing, never to reach this mindset that I'm fine and that I'm biased or I'm a good man or I'm and settle on that, man. It's always like there's always something to improve on, man.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, and that's the sin of pride, like to believe that you're sufficient in and of yourself. It's like, no,
Exactly.
no, you're never going to do that. So I just want to, I got some theological things that I kind of like wouldn't mind. So the relationship with free will is something that always intrigued me. Okay, so where does sin come from in the Islamic mind?
Oh, very good
In
question. I
Islamic,
understand. Sin, sin originates with God Himself. That's our belief is because God is the creator of good and bad. Nothing else can be created except by Him. He's the creator. So intrinsically, He created the demons, He created sin, He created good. So yeah, that's simple answer is God creates everything. So obviously, what I mean by that, where does sin come from? Sin has been placed here by God as a test for us. Because if He wanted to, He mentions it in the Quran. If He wanted, He could have made everything perfect. He could have made us look all the same. Could have made us, like all the same color, all the same, you know, earnings and whatever. But we wouldn't have been thankful to Him. He says, because only in that can you basically recognize Him.
Yeah, of course.
You understand? In a perfect world, you're not going to recognize Him.
No.
But in a world actually of sin, and a world actually of, not to say a sinful world, but a world of deficiencies, man. The Spirit calls out to something greater than it, man.
Yeah, we have a different conceptualization.
Yes.
Well, it's did God create everything? Yes, but we mean a slightly different thing when we say create. Like God didn't create, although God did, of course, create, Satan, Azrael, but like He didn't create evil. He created two things, and it's important to make the distinction here. So there is tragedy in the world. So there are things like cancer, and there are things like premature death, and there are things like, things that are part of the very pattern of reality itself. It's like, those things are tragic. They're things that are linked up with the fact that there's a relationship between the finite and the infinite. Again, so we have infinite capacity, and that's how we're made in the image of God. So we for all practical purposes, we're kind of infinite beings. Like, what we could do is almost literally, well, again, there are some qualifications to that, but again, think chessboard, almost literally infinite. Just coming with that, you need you're going to have to die. There are going to be needs, and because you're going to need to die, there are going to be needs, the things that kill you. And because again, flowing down from that means you're going to have a body, it needs to be fed, it needs to be, or all these things. So there are these things in the world that are tragic, and that is directly created by God. Whereas sin, actual human sin, is different, because that's as a result of human action. And that wasn't created by God. He allowed, and this is how we reconcile the idea that God is still in control of absolutely everything. He allowed the capacity. He said, well, I'm going to allow the capacity for this. You can do it if you want. And it's part of your infinite capacity. Like, I could do that, but I'm not going to. So creating the capacity for something allows for it, but doesn't directly create it. So in our mind, that's a very important distinction. So that, the distinction between tragedy and the tragedies of life, an act of sin, and who is responsible for sin. And for us, and I know it's the same with Islam, like human beings are, God's not. Our concern with saying God created sin is like it makes him vicariously responsible for it.
No, that's not our belief. Yeah. Our belief is not that he's responsible for it. I believe that he created it, right? Because there's no one else that can create it but him. Else that other person has to be God himself. That's our understanding. Man.
Oh, yeah, okay.
He cannot come up from nowhere, man.
Yeah.
You understand? So because he's the creator of it, doesn't mean he inclines towards these things like as a being, right? Because he sits out of these things. He's placed for us on this earth to test us. Between good and evil that we have, so to say, that choice. But essentially he has to be the creator of it. I can understand where you're coming from. I understand where you're coming from, but our belief is it just has to.
And that's a very different conceptualization. You know, it really is too. Okay, what would be so obviously if you live the godly life after you die, you go to heaven. But what would be the ultimate aim of a human life? And I'll frame that by saying, for us as Christians, and it's kind of like you don't become God in the sense of the Mormon sense or the Scientology sense where you become God, but like you're supposed to go back to God and join him and thereby be part of his, become again part of his infinite self. So you're supposed to kind of like become God. Really, that's the ultimate aim, become part of God.
Okay.
So that's the Christian sense of what the purpose of your life is to become God. So like in the Islamic sense, after you die, like do you become, and like we have angels and all that too, like, you know, angelic beings are part of the body of God. So I mean that's, you know, it's kind of like the, you know, I can discuss that and bring it out further. And yes, there are ranks of angels. Yeah, that's kind of like true, but like angels are separate beings from humans, and the nature of our angelic, what we could become as angels, is different from the created angels. So there's all these different hosts of angels. What happens to, I suppose an easy way of asking this was, what happens to a good Muslim when they die?
A lot. I mean, what happens to a Muslim when he dies is what we believe happens to anyone when he dies. You know what I mean? Because I have to accept that from yourself as well. That whatever you think is gonna happen to you, the opposite will happen to me, man. You understand? Like, I
think I understand. So let me tell you what I think.
It's not that I believe like this is only going to happen to Muslims.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean?
Okay. So yeah, all right. What is going to happen to us all when we die in the Islamic worldview, in the Muslim?
Right. Yeah. So, okay, you know already that there's. I'm not gonna. There's a lot of steps before it. Steps in terms of when I die. The real life actually starts then. Because this whole life is a big massive test, right? And God, the basic thing to recognize that He's our Lord. He's our only God to worship, and that's the object of this life, to recognize that. There's many things in this world we have to follow in terms of laws, right? But the ultimate thing is to be His slave, because that's what we are. We're a slave. I'm God's slave. I'm His slave. I worship Him. Understand? So when I die, I'm just trying to bring it into perspective. When I die, the true life is, the veil is removed, so to say, from my eyes, man. Because this whole world is a deception. It's a deception. That the colorful things, the this and that, but the true thing is when I pass away, because now all those things are finished. The test is up. The test is, whether I pass or fail, I'll find out. Right? So I have to pass through certain things, right? We all have to pass through certain things, because I believe you would be there as well, man. Do you understand? In my belief, you understand? We're all going to be there. There's no like section for this faith, or section for that faith, or section for this. There's nothing like this. Because I believe all of us were answerable for this one. Yeah, respectfully, I speak so in front of everyone, because I think that you would say the same thing for me, man. And I don't get angry with anyone if you tell me I'm going to burn in hellfire or something like that.
No. It's okay. This raises a really good thing, because there is a really common, and it's really common among Christians too, actually, especially, God bless them, the evangelicals and your more vehement Protestants. The nature of hell is a really important discussion, because, you know, I meet a lot of secular people. They go, well, a loving creator God would never create hell. Well, it depends on how you conceptualize hell. If you conceptualize hell as like place of burning torment where demons stick pitchforks into your buttocks for being bad, yes, you're totally right. Absolutely. But hell in the Christian mindset is a place where you're separated from God. So you still exist, but you're separated from God. And you're separated from God because you have chosen to separate yourself from God.
Okay.
So you're kind of like going, you know what, God, I reject you. I don't accept you. I don't accept that you're love. I don't accept that. Or I understand and accept it, because, you know, Christ himself had it where you know, he was telling his message and people rejected it. So, you know, we've got to understand that people are going to, if you've got free will, sometimes you're going to reject. And even some of the high angels who were created with intelligence, like, you know, they rebelled against heaven and they rejected. The fires of hell exist, but not in the sense of like burner being punished. The fires of hell is the love of God. And I'll explain it like this. So if you've done something really, really bad and stupid and you knew it, like, what burns you is the love and the knowledge. So it's like, if you've separated yourself from God, what's going to burn you is the love of God, because you can't reject it. It's a reality. It's right there. Like you said, the veil has been lifted from your eyes. It's like, well, there's God. I can no longer reject his existence. I can no longer reject his nature. I can no longer reject these things. Wow. I decided to cut myself off from that. So what burns you is not like, you're on the wrong belief team. It's like, no, that's a Protestant, and again, no disrespect to them, but that's a Protestant evangelical understanding of hell. You're on the wrong belief team. That's not what the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church either. You know, they're good with that. That's not what we believe. It's actually a respect, and again, it's a form of God's respect. It's a respect for his free will for you, because true love, and again, it comes back to the nature of love. If someone really, really rejects you, and it doesn't matter, like it's a woman you love, or someone, a friend, you know, someone rejects your friendship or whatever it is, you can chase them a bit and go, hey, I'll change, or whatever it is, no problem. But if that person actually rejects you, you have to accept that. And if you really do love that person, and you really do have the respect and affection for that person that you say you do, so it's not about you, it's not about you, like you feel good because you're around them, which means it's about you. If it's actually about them, you'll accept that rejection, as painful as it would be. That's what it's like for God. And again, he wants us to become him. Like, again, because, we broke off. We were originally part of that finite. He created us. So in some ways, we're kind of part of that, in the same way that a breath coming out of your mouth would be part of God, although not actually God. Same kind of thing, where you can be drawn back in and ultimately become him, become part of him, in so much as that the cell in your body is part of you, but it also maintains to a certain degree its own individuality, in so much as God has a body. And of course, God doesn't have a body. That's a metaphor. Okay, I'm sure you understand. I'm sure you understand. That's how we concept. And I'll use the broad we, so the Catholic and the Orthodox Church. And I know there's going to be people writing in incidentally going, "No, Maloney, you're so wrong," because I get a couple of Christian people writing them, have theological arguments with me, but I stand by that. I'm quite confident that That's the teaching of the church fathers. So that's our understanding of hell. It's not a place of punishment per se. You are punished, but you're punished by knowledge, punished by your own. It's like, oh my God, like, what's actually burning you is the love of God that you rejected.
Right. I understand what you're saying, but our belief is way different from that.
Yeah. Can you explain it?
Our belief is actually maybe a view that you expressed already, like the actual burning of an individual, actual fire, pit, so to say, that a person will be cast into and be punished, so to say, day and night, day and night, day and night. Look, I'm saying this from a point of view, please, I want everyone to understand, and please, but this is Islamic doctrine is not that Muslims don't enter this place. That's totally incorrect. To understand, which I'm sitting here speaking to you is my voice is, I can feel my voice is going off because I'm scared. I'm scared because I have no guarantees that I cannot enter there. And not just because I'm Muslim and because I'm a priest and because I'm an imam and because I'm all these things, that I have no guarantees from that. But the more I make that a reality in my head, in my mind, that I can go there, I know that I must work so hard on myself not to do that.
That's right.
Because that's put in my path, so to say, that if you walk this line, if you walk this path, you will end up there.
Yep.
You understand? You'll end up being punished by God. Because I'm talking to myself, because you have utter disrespect of Him for the things that I do, man. The sinful things that I do. I have utter disrespect. He's watching me constantly every day. You understand? And I'm in front of Him doing all my sinful things. You understand? Why isn't it that He will punish me? I can understand why He will punish me.
Yeah.
I can sit there and think that, yes, I can figure out, please don't punish me. I can argue all I want. Do you understand?
But I'd punish me. I'd punish me.
No, I wouldn't want to punish me, because the understanding of the way the Quran explains the punishment, it's something that you wouldn't wish on anyone. I mean, even tormentors and things in this world, they torment people and they give people a break. There's no breaks there. Do you understand? But the thing is, I've made my choices, and I have to live with my choices. If I'm dead, if I died, as long as I have breath in my body, I have to tell myself and convince, tell myself that, look, this life is a fleeting world, I mean, I have to devote myself to God. I have to devote myself to worshiping Him, only Him. But ultimately, this is the truth, that this was put there, hellfire was put there as a creation of Him, for me to understand that if I walk down this road, I will end up there. And paradise has been put there as, if I walk down this road, I could possibly end up there. You understand?
Yeah.
But we have the ultimate paradise. Because paradise is like, to explain it to you, what paradise is, like what we understand as what we call Jannah, what paradise is. It is nothing like this world, man. It is this ultimate bliss that you will live, man. No sleep, no tire, no hunger. But everything that you eat is a pleasure. It's almost like when you eat an apple, you take a bite, it tastes good. You take the second bite, it tastes better than that, man. If you take 1 million bites after it, will have tasted better, like 1,000,000 times better. That's basically just to give you a nutshell, what paradise is. So paradise is every desire that you could ever want will be fulfilled, man. That's just the basic thing of what paradise is. Right? But the ultimate paradise, the one we all strive for, is, do we want to be in the garden of the King, or do we want to be in the presence of the King? Do you understand? In the presence of God Himself, man. Learning. Do you understand? Sitting, like God telling us about these secrets, these types of things. In the company, not like you said, to be part, because we can't be part of Him, because we're not like Him. We are not anything like Him. We are human. We are creation of Him. Do you understand? We don't have we weren't created like we believe in the image of God and things. I'm just saying, like, our differences, man.
I get it, mate. Yeah.
Right? So we are creation of Him. So the highest paradise is to sit in the company of the King. Right? The other side of the thing is, like to say it again, hellfire is reality hellfire. Yeah. Because I'm not going to make an excuse for anyone, because that to say, look, this is because what choices would I make, man? If I had a belief that said, look, it's gonna be peaceful on both sides. I'm not gonna be in any trouble, man.
Yeah. There's no consequence. There's no
There's no
story.
consequence or something. Even if, let's not take murder. Let's just take something like taking your wealth from you, man, and getting away with it, man.
Yeah.
Or murder someone and getting away with it.
Mm.
No one finds out.
Yeah.
Or murdering thousands of people. I'm not saying, for him to be thrown into hellfire. That's not my decision to make, man.
Yeah.
But I understand what ultimate justice means.
Yeah.
Do you understand why I must be punished if I did those things?
Mm.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
And what would stop me from doing it is that I know these things that I shouldn't do it.
Mm. Yeah, it's true. Mm. Yes.
I know our belief system is very different.
Yeah, they are. But having said
that, chat, nice. I'm
having
learning a lot now, from yourself.
Having said that, and as you know, I really like these conversations, and I do my incompetent best to become as informed as best as I can with the time that I have and my limited understanding, and the fact that I do come from a Judeo-Christian framework. We've got much more in common. Like the people of the book, and as you well know, that's an Islamic phrase. It's true. Like I find I can discuss stuff round about the same, with the same framework. It's much easier because we understand there is one God. I mean, we have very different views of what of who the prophets are, and as a consequence, the nature of God. But at least we have that, and then we can discuss that. So when I'm discussing stuff with, I suppose with Buddhists, I find it hard. Well, I used to find it hard. Now that I've got a couple of handles, because there's some things that I understand about Buddhism. So there are some handles that we can, because to have a conversation, you've got to have, well, do you understand this concept? Oh, yes. Do you accept this precept or axiom? Oh, yes. You can't have a conversation unless you have that foundational thing. And it took me a while to really get those handles on that. But I still find when I'm discussing stuff with Buddhism, because fundamentally, and this is a very big oversimplification, I accept that, but I think it's accurate. It's a form of atheist humanism, because Tibetan Buddhism, as practiced in Mongolia, where I lived, and in the northern parts of China, there is no God. And fundamentally, the world was created by a collective consciousness, and so we've kind of created it for ourselves collectively, to test ourselves collectively, to get to the state that we were before collectively.
Right.
And in some ways, like, okay, that's odd, but like that kind of reflects a Christian understanding of God. It's like, so you have the infinite God who decided to create a finite world and stick images of himself in there to come back to him. So in some ways, that does reflect a bit of Judeo-Christian, but still, that's a form of atheism. It still means humanity, even as a collective. So human beings are at the top. They're crowning themselves. It's a form of humanist atheism, really, when it comes right down to it. And if you look at a lot of the moral precepts, this idea of karmic, karma is fundamentally transactional. Like, what you do now will be paid back. That's simply transactional. And we Christians do understand that you have a duty to do things, but like the transaction, we completely reject the transactional nature of that. So yeah, like at least people of the book really can talk to each other a lot more than people who are outside of the book. And I can talk. I find I can also talk to Hindus too. I can, at least I find that a little bit easier, because once I started to, break down the idea of like gods as personalities, like I can have real theological conversations with them. And the Sikhs as well. Like Sikhism, oh man, like they're so close to people of the books. It's just not funny. Like the Sikhs are so close to, and I'll say us, the Sikhs are so close to us as people of the book. It's just like, oh, dude, it's almost like, it's almost like
to say something, man, that I mean, you know this already. that we are commanded to believe. That we do believe in all the prophets that you believe in. Man. We believe in Jesus. We believe in Moses. We believe in the Torah. We believe in the Bible, but not. You know what we have we believe we have certain reservations about the Bible.
Yeah.
We have certain reservations we have about the Torah.
Yeah.
I don't want to, I don't want to offend anyone, but
no, and you're not, mate. Look, you can say we don't accept these things. It's not going to offend me. Like,
exactly. I mean, we just to say to everyone, I say respectfully that we say respectfully because we have to have also. I believe we have to maintain respect, but we believe that these books were tampered with, right? And Islam, the last prophet was sent, so to say, to as the final message.
Bring them all together.
Bring it all together, yeah. So what I'm saying is, we didn't come with something new, man. That's why we have so much in common. Islam didn't come with something new. It came with a new law, right? It came with a new law to abrogate the previous law of Jesus's law. Like what we can eat and what we can't eat and things like that was made a bit easier, right? But the belief was always the same. From the time of Adam till the time of Moses, till the time of Abraham, always the belief was the same. The worship of one God, always the same. Do you understand? So that is primarily the message of Islam,
And that's what I explain it, because like I've had, that's what I like. When you get curious atheists go, what's the difference between, like, you're all worshiping the same God? I said, well, the two main differences are, firstly, the different prophets. So that's going to influence the church structures. So when I say prophets, I want you, I need people to include the conceptualization of the organized religion that comes from the prophets. So, the prophets, their words and their interpretation. So that's, for the purposes of this discussion, are one and the same. And I know there's distance, so there's qualifications to that, but like, you get what I'm saying. So there's that, but it's also, because of that, the concept of the nature of God. Like, who is this God guy? And I actually had this Canadian atheist say this to me, and he was serious. Waseem, he wasn't joking. He wasn't joking. He goes, who is this God guy? Can you kind of, like, you seem to be like, can you explain it to me? And I go, no, of course I can't explain God to you. It's like, no. The direct answer to your question is no, I can't. But I can give you my limited understanding and give you, some comparative frameworks that you can do it. But at least, like you said, do we have very different ideas of the nature of God, and which really, to us, when we talk about love, and we're talking about God again, because God is love. That really is and if you get that, really, you get Christianity. And there's so much in that, obviously. It's like, well, what does love mean? We're back to the beginning of our conversation. So, but like, if you get that and you put that at the top of your hierarchy and you worship that, even when you stuff up, like, the boss kind of gets it. It's like, oh, well, you are limited and kind of dumb, and I'll cut you some slack this time, Maloney. It's like, don't do it again. You know what I mean? And you're going to do it again. Because you like it, because sin is fun, let's be honest. It's kind of good. It does. It has its appeal. At least too, like, as people of the book, we can understand the nature of sin, but like, just because it feels good, it doesn't mean that it's not sin. In fact, the direct opposite might be true. It's like, man, this is feeling really good. Yeah, it's probably sin. It's probably, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Maybe that fourth beer and that girl with big boobs. No, that's no. All right, mate. Hey, look, we've taken up so much of your time, mate. Would you like to make any other comments, like, just before we kind of wrap this up?
No, it's okay. I think I said enough. I don't speak too much.
Mate, you have
just thanks for the opportunity, Matt. I really appreciate it.